This is the VECYS CR60 car refrigerator. It's actually the largest car refrigerator they make. And as you can see from the box, this is probably not fitting in your front seat. And if you have a compact, you might have to put down the rear seats just to put it in your hatch. I'm interested in looking at this guy because it has dual zones. It has a separate freezer and fridge compartment, and supposedly you can control the temperatures of them independently. So we're going to take it out of the box and put it through its paces. Alright, out of the box, it's significantly smaller than the box. The box had several inches on the top, bottom, left, right, but it's still a 60 liter, I think it's 63 quart refrigerator. The lid here has a little snapper that connects it and locks it down. Lift it up. It has a metal wire here that keeps it from flipping too far over. It's held on by Phillips screws if you want to take that off. I was a little worried the wire might get caught inside, but it looks like when you close it, it flips inside just kind of by a spring force and it works there. So it has a fancy handle on this side that's the double handle, so you can use it like a regular handle, or you can use it to pull on the wheels. And to get it to pull, when you set it down like this, it has feet on both sides, so when you set it down, it's very sturdy, it's not going to be rolling around. But when you lift it up, it lifts it off the feet, and then you can slide this thing around on the wheels. The handle on the other side is just a standard handle. Alright, so as it comes from the factory with a box of accessories inside, this thing weighs 43 pounds. You know, you can certainly take it from the ground, lift it up into the bed of a truck. It's, certainly doable. When it's full, though, with things in it, it's going to get a lot heavier. It's heavy enough that I would probably choose to make use of the rolling feature to get it out to a vehicle. If I had a driveway or a sidewalk to roll it on, I would definitely be rolling this thing. And then when I got to where I was going, I would pick it up at that point and lift it to where I needed to lift it when I got to the vehicle. The side over here with the compressor in it is a little bit heavier, but it's not horribly out of balance when you're carrying it around. Looking inside, we have the manual, we have the box with power accessories, and with these power accessories, you're getting two types of plugs. One, which is your 12 or 24 volt auto plug, and the other, which is your household adapter, so you can plug it into 120 or 240 volt AC. And it comes with a plug here. This is for a US 120 volt outlet, but it has one of these pretty standard plug-ins here so that you could substitute this out for a 240 volt outlet if you want. And it's a universal power supply, 100 to 240 volts, 50-60 hertz. It outputs 14.5 volts at 6 amps, up to 87 watts is what it says. And this guy on the box says it's a 60 watt draw. So that's how you power it on AC current. Now inside we have two compartments, and they are separated by this removable plastic panel. I suspect there's probably foam inside. And it has a groove here, so there's only one groove, so that is the separation. And from a liter standpoint, this is the refrigeration side, and that is the freezer side. The freezer side is about, I think they said, slightly larger liter-wise than the refrigeration size, but there's a big chunk down here that the compressor takes out. So obviously if you want to use this just as a fridge or just as a freezer, you can take that out, use the whole thing. But with it in, this is your separation size, and you can put things there and put things here. And it's quite deep. You can see I'm up to my elbow in this thing, so you're going to be stacking things on top of themselves to completely fill this. Now the lid is attached by this little cable. It looks like it does a good job of whenever I close it, it slides to the inside, so I've never had it get caught inside between the door. And obviously you could remove that if you wanted to have this lid flop all the way over. And it latches down in place. Now the lid is removable. One side is kind of keyed and one side has a slot, so you can lift it out like that, and you can see there's the slot and the key here. So you could take this lid off and replace it with something else. I haven't seen any replacement lids that, you know, on some of these models might go higher or something, but the lid is kind of just a separate piece that pulls off. So on the left-hand side, there is a drain plug on the bottom. I don't think the seal here is good enough to keep water from the freezer side coming over to the refrigerator side, but there is a drain plug in the bottom if you need to use that for anything. Alright, I plugged the power adapter in, and just the power adapter being plugged into the refrigerator idle with the refrigerator turned off is like half a watt. And so that's probably just inefficiencies in the power adapter there. I'm going to show you how to use the control panel on this VECYS CR60 fridge freezer combo. I believe it will also apply to the CR35 and CR50, which use the same control panel. So most frequently asked question is, how do I change Fahrenheit to centigrade? There's the setting button and the up button. If you hold them both for 3 seconds, the Fahrenheit or centigrade will start flashing. And at that point you can push up and down to change, in this case to centigrade, or back to Fahrenheit, and you just have to wait for it to stop flashing to get out of that mode. Now the setting button by itself will affect max versus eco, so you can put it into eco mode or switch it back to max mode. If you want to change the battery cutoff voltage, high, medium, low, you push and hold for 3 seconds until it starts flashing, and then you can change it to low or to high. High will cut off at the highest voltage, so that saves your battery the most. If you want to use your battery all the way down, go to L for low. Now we have the left side, which is typically the refrigerator, and the right side, which is the freezer. The left side temperature must be warmer than the right side temperature, or the same. So if you want to adjust temperatures, the up and down arrow will do one of these guys, and while it's flashing, you can push the setting button and it will switch to the other one, so you can change them back and forth. Now if you are missing or have removed this center thing here, there is a sensor that detects it's gone, and when that happens, it only has a single temperature zone. The left or the entire zone is there. So if you only have a single zone, it's probably because this thing is missing, or the sensor that detects it is malfunctioning. But when you put it back in, if the sensor's working right, you'll go back to the 2 zones. This guy's running full blast, and it's drawing 58 point some watts. Now once it gets down to temperature, I expect the average draw will be less than 60 watts. I should point out that my ambient temperature in the house is 75 Fahrenheit, so this guy already has to keep it below ambient just to get down to its highest, which is 68, although I've set them both to 34 right now. Alright, it's been an hour and 15 minutes. And right now it says the left side's at 34 and the right side is at 37. So we're going to test what the actual water temperature is. It'll take the water longer to get down to temperature. So actually that's pretty good there. That says 34.9 on the left side. That says 37.6, so I'm actually quite impressed. It gets down to temperature. It's probably been at this temperature for 30 minutes or so for the water to have also gotten down to that temperature. So it'll get down to temperature, you know, within at least half an hour, maybe even faster. And it seems to be maintaining this temperature pretty well. Alright, now I am going to change the right side down to freezer mode. I'm putting it all the way down, so we're at -4 Fahrenheit on the right, and this 34 is just a couple degrees above freezing on the left. So I'm kind of interested to see if it can actually not freeze the refrigerator while fully freezing very hard the freezer, and I kind of suspect there's going to be some bleed through of temperature here. Alright, I've been running this about an hour with the right hand side set to freezing, and there is a little bit of cold bleed through to over here. I'm down to like 30.0, so technically, you know, under the freezing point of water, this water has not frozen, at least not yet, so either my temperature sensor isn't exactly accurate, or the water just hasn't fully frozen yet. The water over here has definitely started to freeze. It's slushy, and you know, we're down here about 31 or whatever. So I put in a thing of sugar so I can measure the temperature in the sugar after this thing freezes all the way down. Okay, this thing's been trucking along. The right-hand freezer side is down to 3 Fahrenheit, so very chilly. It says the left hand is at 34. Still liquid water. My thermostat says that water is colder than freezing, so maybe it just hasn't got the message yet. Over here we have definite ice. I'll throw this in the sugar a little bit. It's going to take a while for the temperature to move into the probe from the sugar. Over here goes water. We're definitely below freezing. Looks like it might be stabilizing around 10 Fahrenheit. So it's definitely freezing on that side. And this water has not yet frozen on this side. Well, no, there's a thin sheen of ice on the top of it. But when you stick your probe in, I think it just flash froze right there, actually. It was not at all slushy when I measured it the first time. So yeah, the water had gone below freezing, but hadn't actually flash frozen yet. So it is freezing over in this compartment over here, despite it saying 34 over there, which is not. So the sensor's gone up to -1 because I'm letting warm air in from outside. And you can see the sugar's at 1 degree Fahrenheit, so it's certainly keeping it at a very cold temperature. It may not be down to the fully -3 Fahrenheit that the sensor has, but that's probably because the sensor is integrated into the wall of the unit. So it's certainly able to lower these temperatures down to quite freezing. The fridge-freezer combo got down to about a -3 and 34 here. The compressor had turned off. I opened it up, took some temperature measurements, compressor turned back on. I have reset the power usage meter here. It's currently drawing about 34 or 35 watts while it's taking the compressor to lower the temperature back down. I'm going to leave this thing for 24 hours, see how much power it takes to maintain this temperature for 24 hours. So I've had this fridge running for 24 hours with this guy set at refrigeration temperature and that guy set as low as it'll go. The compressor is turned off a couple of times, but mostly it's been running. You can see here there's the time count, 23:58. And the total electrical usage is 640 watt-hours, or 0.64 kilowatt-hours. If you're converting the watts to 12-volt usage in amp-hours, that's about 51 amp-hours. Now, when you have this side at the super, as low as it'll go freezer setting, this side over here, even though it's set to refrigerate, does freeze a little bit. So there is some temperature leakage going on here. I have a bowl of sugar to do my temperature reads in because I can't put a probe in the frozen water. So this guy here says you're -2, -3 Fahrenheit. And you can see this probe is getting down towards the negative numbers here. So there's negative something Fahrenheit, -0.1, 1 point something. So, you know, it's pretty close. It's at negative almost 2 here, Fahrenheit. For those of you in centigrade world, that's -19 centigrade. So it's able to get it pretty cold when the compressor is running full blast. It does take 640 watt-hours for a full day of operation, but it is certainly able to hold things at a very cold level. I should mention ambient temperature has been about 70, you know, somewhere between 70 and 75 for those 24-hour periods, and that's in Fahrenheit. You can see the frost lines here where the coolant pipes are running behind that plastic wall, at least in the freezer portion. The refrigerator portion doesn't have that. And you can see that there are separate coolant pipes for the freezer section versus the refrigeration section. They have a magnetic valve that switches back and forth so they can drive one or the other. Alright, I've set this to 34 Fahrenheit. I let it run for about 12 hours overnight. It's been cycling on and off. There, it just cycled off. I've seen it get as high as 38 Fahrenheit on the display and down to 34 when it cycles back on. It looks like the water here is about 40. And the water down here at the bottom is at 36, 37. So it's been keeping it pretty close to the 34. Now I'm going to seal it up for a day and see how much power it takes to just refrigerate the entire compartment. The ambient temperature is in the 70s. You know, it might get down to 70 at night, maybe 75 in the day in the house here. So we will reset this guy and come back in 24 hours. Alright, the fridge has been maintaining the set point of 34 Fahrenheit for about 24-25 hours. You can see here, this water here is actually closer to 40, although the refrigerator did just cycle, so it gets up to about 38 on its sensor, and then it runs the compressor until its sensor gets down to about 34. So down here at the bottom we have 36 Fahrenheit. So, you know, this is definite refrigeration temperatures. It's been maintaining this for 24 hours without opening the lid. And doing that, it's used 190 watt hours. So the actual time was 24 hours 41 minutes. But you can see that this 190 watt hours is significantly less than when it's trying to maintain super cold freezer temperatures. So 190 watt hours, if you're converting that to 12 volt battery, that's about 16 amp hours of your 12 volt battery over a 1-day period to maintain refrigeration. So to give you an idea of volume, you can look up the actual internal measurements online. This is 12 cans, 12 pack of 355 milliliter 12 fluid ounce cans. And so on the freezer or the colder side, this guy will fit right there. It also fits in here. Refrigeration side, it'll fit in here with a little extra room. It doesn't quite fit that way. Definitely doesn't fit this way. So we got 2 across. 4 that way. So we got 8 in the bottom there. Looks like just about the same up here. Well, not quite. There. Now, height-wise, we're 3 cans high here. 2 cans high there. We have a little bit of space. That still closes. But you can get 12 cans in there. There's going to be 3 high, so 12, 24, 36 cans in that refrigeration section. Now if you were to remove the center divider, on the bottom here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cans. 1, 2, 3, 4 cans. So if you put these 12 cans in the refrigerator and you just leave them there for 12 hours, they'll get down to about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's not really taxing the refrigerator, it's cycling every so often. It's really just the physics of how long it takes the heat to go out of a can into a refrigerator. So if you really want to chill them quickly, you put it in the freezer compartment and you set this thing down as low as it's going to go. So right now, I have this thing, currently it's at 72 because it's just at ambient temperature. And the liquid here is actually closer to 73. That would be 23 centigrade. So we are going to set the freezer here as -4. Let's see, I think that's as low as it goes. So freezer's at -4 Fahrenheit. Refrigeration side is set to 34 Fahrenheit. Realistically, there's nothing in there, so it's just going to run the freezer the whole time. And this guy's probably going to get lower than 34. So let's keep an eye on that, try not to break any of these cans, and see how long it takes to get them to a chill temperature in the freezer, and how much power it takes. So if you turn on both the fridge and freezer compartment, it does favor the left-hand side. That's the refrigeration side. So it does appear to look like it's going to get that cooled all the way down before it will switch over the valve and start cooling down the freezer side. Alright, as soon as the left-hand refrigeration side hit its set point, it switched the valve over and now it's cooling the right-hand side for the freezer. It took just about exactly 15 minutes to get the refrigeration side, which is empty, from ambient 72 Fahrenheit down to the set point of 34 Fahrenheit. Right, it's been 30 minutes. The temperature in the refrigeration section has gone from 34 up to 40. The freezer section is going down. It's down from about 72 down to 43. So at some point I expect this guy to switch over to do more refrigeration in the refrigeration section, because that 40 is a little higher than the set point. I've seen it before go from like 34 to 39 and then go back down, but it'll be interesting to see if maybe it just keeps doing this guy until it gets all the way down, and that's before it switches over, because it's going to take a long time for this guy to get down to -4 Fahrenheit. So it'll be interesting to see when it switches back over to cool that one a little bit. Now, because the freezer isn't perfectly insulated from the refrigerator, when this temperature gets below that temperature, some heat's going to start moving over, and basically by keeping the freezer at a low temperature, it should keep the refrigeration going pretty well as well. Alright, it's been running for an hour and 47 minutes. It's used 90 watt-hours, and the freezer compartment's down to 23 Fahrenheit. The empty refrigeration compartment is kind of hovering at 43, so it looks like it's cooling this guy down, and any cooling this guy gets is because it's flowing through the divider. Alright, 3¼ hours. It has used 150 watt-hours, and we're down to -16 for its sensor. This side over here is at 39 Fahrenheit. And the liquid in here is at 32, which is certainly cold enough to drink. This guy here is a little smaller. This one here is a full one. Let's check and see. Now it's at 41, so there's only about a half a can there, and the lid was open. So either this location up here is cooling down faster because it's near the edge, and this can over here was kind of in the middle between some other cans, or maybe that location isn't cooling as much, or maybe that can just had more liquid in it. But it's only down to 40, which is pretty reasonable, but it looks like maybe 3½ hours is how long you'd want to leave a can to get it really chilled. Alright, so this is the best part of reviewing freezers, is the ice cream test. You can see I have this thing set to kind of about 3 Fahrenheit, and so it goes between 3 and 7 or so as it cycles. But the ice cream there is, below 3 Fahrenheit. That's, slightly cooler than my normal freezer would do, so I might be able to bump that temperature up slightly. And that is definitely firm enough, so, there's no problem keeping that ice cream firm. The problem is that you freeze things in the refrigeration section. Okay, so I have the refrigerator at 35 and the freezer unit at 10 Fahrenheit, which is a little warmer than I'd like for ice cream, but that's the temperature that I found, the lowest temperature I found where the water in here wouldn't completely freeze immediately. But you can see here it's down to 25 Fahrenheit, so it's actually below the freezing point. And so it's still chilling this refrigeration section lower than I would really like. This water is not frozen, even though it says its temperature is below the freezing point. But there, you can see it just did the phase change. So now it's turned into a slush, and it's raised the temperature just up to the freezing melting point of water and ice there. So the 10 Fahrenheit still lowers this temperature down here, probably to 26 Fahrenheit or so. This can has not yet burst. I can still pinch it. So the water in it is not frozen yet. Check out the ice cream. So the internal temperature of the ice cream is closer to 14. So the 10 Fahrenheit, it goes down to 10 Fahrenheit, and then it kind of creeps up until it gets to about 14, 15, and then goes down again. So it looks like when you have the thing set to 10 Fahrenheit, the actual ice cream in the bottom here is around 14 Fahrenheit. From a softness standpoint, it's soft. It's not bad. It's still edible. It's not runny, but it's close. So if you like your ice cream hard, that's not cold enough. If you like it nice and soft, that might be just perfect for you. But I certainly wouldn't move this any higher than 10 Fahrenheit. And the problem you run in there is it'll be difficult to keep ice cream hard without also freezing things in the refrigeration section. Now, if you had a lot of things in here, it'd probably take a while to freeze, so if it's just a couple days, you'd be fine. But if you're doing this long term, you're going to have that issue where lettuce will freeze, or you might get some of your drinks frozen if you're trying to keep the freezer compartment also very cold. Alright, so let's wrap up. This fridge has a lot of capacity. It's the largest capacity one. There's also a CR50 liter and a CR35 liter, and the only real difference is the size of the center sections. Everything else about the fridges looks to be exactly the same. So I expect that the power draw is going to be very similar. In fact, the CR18 has a very similar power draw. It's slightly less, but it's a lot less volume. It's only 18 liters. So my suspicion here is that all of these fridges use about the same compressor, and so realistically the power draw is going to be about the same regardless of the size of them. So 640 watt hours to keep a large thing frozen for a day, it's not unreasonable. You can get better performance if you pay a lot of money for a dedicated off-grid fridge, but for something just using in your car or whatever, that's not bad. And especially if you're just doing refrigeration, 180 watt hours for a day of refrigeration. If you have a 50 watt solar panel that gets 5 hours a day of sun, you're fine there. If you had a 100 watt solar panel, you're only going to need about 2 hours of direct sun every day to power your refrigerator for a full day. So that's a reasonable amount of power draw. I like the aesthetics of the white plastic on the CR18 fridge a little better than it's kind of the pebbled roto-molded plastic on the larger fridges. It's fine. It's nothing special. I just like the slick white plastic look of the CR18 a little better. I made a lot of about the temperature coupling between the freezer and the fridge compartment in the videos, and this is more of an issue when you're doing measurements with the fridge mostly empty. If you put a lot of things in the fridge, so if you put a lot of liquids in the refrigeration side, it's going to take a long time for the heat to get out of those liquids down to a freezing point. And so also there's temperature differentials vertically in the fridge. So if you put some cans of drinks in the bottom and then some things on top of that, meat and cheeses, and then at the very top you put lettuce and things you're worried about freezing, there's going to be a big temperature differential there, and it's going to take quite a long time for the heat to all leak out into the freezer compartment and really start freezing things. So as long as you're opening the fridge some of the time, putting new things in, taking things out, you're probably going to be able to use the left and right side as a freezer and as a fridge. Now, if you have the freezer cranked all the way down, you're going to have to keep in mind that eventually the heat from the refrigeration side is going to be all pulled into there, and that refrigeration side will go down a little lower. It's a little annoying that the set point is the lowest it will display. So if you set the fridge to 34, it'll move it down to 34, then it'll start working on the freezer. But if the fridge starts going below 34, it doesn't change the display. So the lowest thing on the fridge side that it will display is the set point. And so it's kind of lying to you there, and so it's possible your refrigeration will get, your fridge side will get down below freezing and you won't know that's happening. So you have to keep a little bit of an eye on that. But all in all, it's a pretty good offering.